In the bone-chilling cold of -60 degrees Celsius, Zhang Yi collapsed painfully onto the frozen ground. In his past life, the very neighbors he had generously fed and protected did not see him as their savior. They viewed him merely as prey to be slaughtered for food. Even worse, the woman he had cherished most, Fang Yu, teamed up with the others to betray and trap him. The ruthless mob swarmed him with knives, hacking away and tearing at his flesh piece by piece. Overwhelmed by agonizing pain and burning resentment, Zhang Yi's consciousness gradually faded into the dark abyss. However, when his eyes snapped open again, he found himself not lying on the frozen wasteland, but in a warm, comfortable bed. Scrambling to sit up, he glanced at the wall calendar in his phone, realizing in disbelief that he had been reborn 1 full month before the onset of the global freezing apocalypse. Clutching his sweaty palms, he knew with absolute certainty that the excruciating nightmare of his past life was real. Fate had granted him a second chance at life and a shot at vengeance, reigniting an uncontrollable blaze of revenge in his heart. Suddenly, a strange energy surged through his consciousness, giving birth to a boundless, time-locked dimensional space. Infinity-dimensional space. Reaching out to touch the nearby cup with his mental intent, the cup vanished into thin air, slipping instantly into his space. When he willed it to return, it reappeared in his hand just as piping hot and fresh as before. With this divine power, he knew he would be completely unstoppable in the impending Ice Age. Right then and there, Zhang Yi swore to himself that he would never play the naive, foolish philanthropist ever again. He resolved to make every single traitor, especially that venomous woman, Fang Yu, and the greedy neighbors, pay a horrifying price. He understood that in a ruthless world, self-preservation came before everything else. Without hesitation, he mortgaged all his properties, assets, and belongings to cash out as much money as possible. He took out astronomical loans from banks and credit agencies, knowing full well that paper money would soon be nothing more than worthless scrap. Flush with immense wealth, he secretly targeted international supply hubs and mega warehouses. Using his spatial space, he swept up millions of tons of premium food supplies, rice, grain, and meats in the blink of an eye. Entire storage facilities of refrigerators, winter garments, and life-saving pharmaceuticals disappeared without a trace. No security system could detect his spatial power as goods vanished into thin air, and he went on to hoard colossal reserves of gasoline, diesel, military-grade generators, and energy resources. With basic survival supplies secured, he placed massive advance orders with luxury restaurants, tucking away thousands of freshly cooked steaks, gourmet seafood dishes, fine wines, and desserts into his space. Because time was completely frozen inside his spatial pocket, the food would never spoil or cool down. He also gathered thousands of military thermal suits and extreme cold gear to withstand the ferocious blizzards. His spatial hoard became an inexhaustible treasure trove, capable of sustaining hundreds of people for decades. With supplies fully prepped, Zhang Yi turned his undivided attention to transforming his apartment into an impenetrable Safehouse fortress. Paying top dollar to a premier military engineering firm, he ordered urgent, high-spec modifications. The entire apartment was lined with heavy aerospace-grade steel armor plating, capable of withstanding direct missile strikes and bomb blasts. The windows were fitted with multiple layers of ballistic glass and reinforced blast shutters, sealing the interior off from any outside breach. Though it looked like an ordinary apartment from the outside, the interior was an invincible military bunker. To conquer the bitter -60-degree chill, he installed completely autonomous power and climate control systems. He integrated high-capacity nuclear-grade battery packs and heavy-duty diesel generators connected to specialized underfloor heating systems. The air purification and smart climate controls maintained a steady springtime temperature of 26 degrees Celsius year-round. Around the corridors and building perimeter, he set up low-light night vision cameras and high-sensitivity sensors to detect any approaching threat instantly. Beyond impenetrable defense, he lined the doorway with automated sentry turrets and high-voltage electric traps, rigging the main door to vaporize anyone who dared touch it. From the black market, he amassed sniper rifles, machine guns, grenades, and hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. Completely armed to the teeth, his home became the ultimate apocalypse safehouse, just as the 30-day countdown quietly ticked to 0. When the final day arrived, the sky turned pitch black as the most devastating blizzard in human history swept across the planet. Within minutes, the temperature plummeted from -10 down to a bone-cracking -60. People screamed in terror on the streets as the freezing apocalypse officially began. Power grids snapped and water pipes burst under the extreme freeze, plunging the entire city into chaos. Despite bundling up in layers of winter clothes, residents could not survive the lethal cold. Frozen corpses began piling up on the streets, and within days, human civilization collapsed entirely under the weight of starvation and freezing agony. Yet, inside his fortress, Zhang Yi sat back comfortably, pouring himself a glass of fine red wine. Lounging on his plush leather sofa in a balmy 26-degree room, he savored a sizzling, aromatic steak fresh off the grill while sipping vintage wine and watching the security feeds on his big screen. Hot water, steady electricity, and endless gourmet meals flowed effortlessly in his sanctuary. Looking at the contrast between the living hell outside and his personal paradise, he smiled with immense satisfaction. Soon enough, the residential building's chat group exploded with desperate pleas for help and agonizing cries. Most neighbors had run completely out of food and lacked fuel to heat their freezing rooms, leaving them on the verge of death. Some smashed their wooden furniture to burn for warmth, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. People begged and wept in the chat for a single bite of food, but with everyone freezing and starving, no one was willing or able to help. That was when messages from his treacherous ex-lover, Fang Yu, popped up on his phone. In her usual sweet, manipulative tone, she begged him to let her take shelter in his apartment and share his food. She sobbed, claiming her room was freezing to death and that she hadn't eaten in 2 days. She shamelessly offered herself to him, promising to surrender her body and everything she had if he would only let her in. Remembering how viciously she had butchered him in his past life, Zhang Yi smiled with cold disgust. He rejected her mercilessly with chilling words and then dropped photos of sizzling steaks, steaming seafood, and bottles of vintage wine right into the community chat. Starving and freezing, the neighbors went completely wild with rage upon seeing those luxury meals. The chat room erupted with furious curses, with people calling him heartless and threatening to murder him if he didn't hand over his supplies. Zhang Yi simply watched their meltdown with an amused smirk. Driven mad by greed and hunger, building elder Uncle Yu and the ruthless neighbors joined forces with Zhang Yu. They conspired to overpower Zhang Yu, break into his home, and divide his vast stockpile among themselves. Armed with crowbars, axes, iron pipes, and torches, more than 20 armed thugs marched up to Zhang Yi's steel front door. Outside his reinforced door, the mob gathered aggressively. Fang Yu stood at the front, screaming at the top of her lungs for him to open up, while Uncle Yu threatened to smash the door to pieces, drag Zhang Yi out, and slaughter him. Watching their grotesque greed through his monitors, Zhang Yi uttered not a single word of warning and calmly pressed a button on his remote. The mob swung their heavy crowbars and axes with all their might, but the military-grade steel door remained unscratched. Frustrated, they grabbed the door handles and metal frame to tear it down, and at that exact moment, Zhang Yi activated the high-voltage current. A devastating surge of electricity ripped through the metal door and coursed instantly into their bodies. Uncle Yu and the thugs touching the door shrieked in agony as their bodies convulsed violently, scorching black and collapsing dead on the spot. Fang Yu and the remaining survivors panicked, scrambling backward in sheer terror. Greed was instantly replaced by paralyzing dread, but Zhang Yi had no intention of letting these traitors live alive. He opened the concealed ballistic firing slits and triggered the automated machine gun turrets.
A storm of lead tore through the hallway, mercilessly cutting down the fleeing neighbors. Fang Yu was struck repeatedly as she tried to run, collapsing into a pool of blood with a dying wail. The corridor was painted in blood and littered with corpses as the traitors were wiped out to the last man. Wiping his hands with a towel, Zhang Yi stepped back inside with a cold, calm smile. With the building cleared of threats, a chilling silence fell over the neighborhood. But as the -60-degree freeze worsened, starvation spread across the city, and rumors of Zhang Yi's warm, abundantly stocked fortress began to circulate. Those rumors quickly caught the attention of local armed syndicates and cutthroat gangs. A few days later, the notorious Black Dragon Gang, an armed outfit of over 50 hardened criminals equipped with firearms, grenades, and armored snowmobiles, surrounded his building. Their boss shouted through a megaphone, demanding that Zhang Yi surrender all his supplies, or they would blast the apartment with rockets and burn him alive. Zhang Yi casually sipped his hot coffee, watching them with utter contempt through his monitors. The gang tried to breach the building using tear gas, sledgehammers, and heavy explosives, but the reinforced aerospace steel walls barely trembled, keeping the interior completely dust-free. As the thugs grew unsettled by the impenetrable fortress, Zhang Yi remotely activated the perimeter machine gun turrets.
Heavy barrels slid out from hidden wall panels, raining down a relentless barrage of bullets on the criminals below. In mere seconds, over half the gang lay dead in pools of blood. As the rest scattered in panic, Zhang Yi picked them off one by one with pinpoint sniper fire. Just then, a strange figure stepped forward from the rear of the gang, a fire mutant whose body had mutated from the cataclysm to manipulate blazing flames. The fire mutant unleashed massive fireballs from his palms, melting the machine gun barrels and attempting to sear through the steel armor, despite the -60 degrees ambient cold. Grinning with arrogant confidence, he launched wave after wave of intense flame at the fortress door. Realizing conventional weapons wouldn't cut it, Zhang Yi channeled his dimensional space for combat. As his psychic power coalesced, space itself rippled, unleashing his offensive ability, the dimensional slash. Directing the slash through the firing port, the massive incoming fireballs vanished instantly, swallowed whole by a spatial void. Shocked and terrified, the fire mutant tried to muster another attack, but a razor-sharp rift in space sliced clean through the air, cleaving his body cleanly in two before he could react. Seeing their mutant leader slain in an instant, the surviving gang members broke and ran. But Zhang Yi pulled out a military rocket launcher and obliterated their snowmobile convoy in a blazing fireball. After the battle, he swept up all their dropped firearms, ammunition, and vehicles into his dimensional space. Having proven his supremacy over mutants, he reinforced his defenses even further, knowing bigger threats were on the horizon. Sure enough, the fall of the Black Dragon Gang drew the attention of the city's most formidable underground military warlords, the Blood Wolf Syndicate. Armed with hijacked military hardware, tanks, armored vehicles, and rocket launchers, they brought hundreds of soldiers, along with 3 high-ranking mutants, a steel mutant, a void slicer, and a poison mutant. They launched a full-scale assault, bombarding the Safehouse with heavy artillery and tank shells. Yet the armored Safehouse stood tall without a single crack. The 3 elite mutants then stepped forward to breach it manually. The steel mutant transformed into a colossal iron juggernaut, hammering the blast door with massive fists. The poison mutant pumped toxic green fumes into the ventilation shafts, and the void slicer prepared to shred the walls with spatial blades. Zhang Yi easily neutralized the venom with his advanced filtration system and unleashed a new technique, Space Void. An immense black vortex materialized outside the Safehouse, devouring the poison gas and spatial blades before reflecting that destructive energy right back at the attackers. The shockwave instantly crushed the poison mutant and void slicer, causing them to vomit blood and drop dead. When the enraged steel mutant charged forward, Zhang Yi pulled an anti-tank laser cannon from his space and fired a blinding beam that punched a gaping hole right through the Iron Giant's chest.
With their mutant champions wiped out, the hundreds of syndicate soldiers fled in sheer terror. Donning a military-grade thermal combat suit, Zhang Yi stepped outside his fortress for the first time, unleashing hundreds of dimensional slashes simultaneously. Spatial rifts tore across the battlefield, cleaving armored vehicles in half and triggering a chain of massive explosions that wiped out the entire syndicate within minutes. Not a single enemy escaped alive across the blood-soaked snow. Zhang Yi scavenged their weapons, fuel, and supplies into his space before marching directly to the Blood Wolf Syndicate's main headquarters. Bombarding their stronghold with heavy artillery from his dimensional stash, he burned the remaining warlords and criminal leaders to ashes, eradicating the entire organization from existence and establishing himself as the undisputed absolute ruler of the city.
While clearing the fallen stronghold, Zhang Yi discovered a subterranean vault where the syndicate had imprisoned, starved, and tortured innocent survivors, orphan children, and the elderly. Shivering and starving to death, the captives dropped to their knees in terror when they saw him, but looking into their eyes, Zhang Yi saw no malicious greed, only pure, humble desperation to survive. Deep within the heart of the man who had mercilessly slaughtered his enemies, a genuine spark of compassion rekindled. He brought out warm food and heavy thermal clothes from his space to feed and clothe them, resolving to build an oasis of hope for humanity in this frozen world. Guiding them safely back to his fortress, he set out to build a new chapter. With all ruthless enemies eradicated, Zhang Yi started searching the frozen ruins for surviving good-hearted people, rescuing innocent civilians, doctors, engineers, and children. Having learned from his past life, he thoroughly vetted each person's character before granting them entry. Centered around his Safehouse fortress, he launched the grand construction of a subterranean sanctuary, humanity's oasis. Utilizing vast stores of steel, building materials, and heavy machinery from his infinite space, the engineers and workers excavated and constructed a massive underground metropolis. Shielded entirely from the -60-degree freeze outside, this subterranean city became an impregnable haven built to outlast any catastrophe. To power the oasis, Zhang Yi installed high-capacity nuclear-powered generators and industrial thermal heaters, keeping the underground city at a balmy, comfortable springtime climate year-round. He brought out fertile soil and seeds from his space, setting up sprawling subterranean agricultural and livestock farms beneath artificial sun lamps. Fresh crops flourished, providing a continuous, abundant food supply while the world above starved. Zhang Yi distributed food, clothing, and medical supplies fairly, freeing all residents from cold and hunger. The sick were cured with advanced medicine, and the laughter of children echoed through the warm corridors. The people revered him as their savior and followed his rules without question, yet he maintained strict laws. Anyone who stole, betrayed, or harmed others was punished immediately. When a few bad apples once plotted to steal food and stage a coup, Zhang Yi caught them instantly with his surveillance and spatial powers, executing public justice and casting them out into the lethal freeze above. By ruthlessly weeding out the wicked and fiercely protecting the virtuous, the underground city remained a peaceful, harmonious paradise. As years went by, the surface world remained locked in an eternal frozen wasteland, but the underground oasis founded by Zhang Yi grew ever larger, eventually housing tens of thousands of vetted, honest survivors. Agriculture, education, and healthcare flourished on a level even higher and more organized than before the apocalypse, turning the sanctuary into an unyielding beacon of human civilization. Standing atop the central observation tower of the oasis, Zhang Yi gazed down at the vibrant underground city he had built. The weak, betrayed young man of the past was now an invincible leader and savior. The bitter hatred of his past life had completely dissolved, replaced with profound peace and unshakable inner strength. Walking up to the surface observation deck, he looked through the reinforced glass at the endless snow-covered horizon, while spatial energy swirled gently around his fingertips. No matter how violently the blizzard raged outside,
nothing could ever breach the fortress and oasis he had created. Having overcome the apocalypse and eradicated every evil in his path, Jiang Yi stood for all time as the supreme, revered guardian of the new frozen world.